It began not with kings, not with gods, but with mud, deep in the valleys between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Something extraordinary happened, something that changed the fate of humanity forever. Before Egypt, before Rome, before time itself was measured in years, there existed a world where the line between myth and reality blurred. They called it Mesopotamia, the land between rivers. But how did a barren landscape of dust and floodwaters give birth to the very idea of civilization? Was it luck, divine intervention, or something far more mysterious? Something buried beneath the sands, waiting to be rediscovered? As archaeologists dig deeper, they uncover clues, fragments of cities that defy explanation, strange writings that whisper of God who walked among men, and structures built with precision thousands of years before the tools to create them supposedly existed. Tonight, we journey back over 5,000 years to where civilization began, and perhaps to where humanity's greatest secrets still lie hidden. Under the scorching Mesopotamian sun, the wind carried echoes of a world long forgotten, a place where human ingenuity first defied nature itself. This is a cradle of civilization, where writing was born, where cities first rose, and where mankind dared to rule the earth rather than be ruled by it. Hey, in what is now modern-day Iraq, Syria, and parts of Turkey, our ancestors transformed chaos into order. They created systems of law, commerce, and belief that would ripple across millennia. Yet, for every answer found in the ruins of your Babylon and Sumer, new mysteries emerge. Who were the first rulers that united people under one banner? What divine knowledge inspired the creation of ziggurats that scraped the heavens? And why does every ancient civilization, from Egypt to the Mayans, tell eerily similar stories of God descending from the sky? This is not just history. This is a mystery written in clay, blood, and stars. Before we journey deeper into the forgotten origins of humanity, make sure you subscribe to History Vault, where the past isn't just remembered, it's revealed. Thousands of years before the pyramids of Egypt pierced the skies, before the Great Wall of China stretched across continents, and long before Greece gave birth to philosophy, there was Mesopotamia, a land that would forever change the fate of humankind. It was here, between two mighty rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, that humanity took its first bold step towards civilization. But what made this harsh, unpredictable landscape the birthplace of everything we now call civilized? It wasn't beauty or comfort that gave birth to progress, it was necessity. The land was both a gift and a curse, a paradox of abundance and destruction. When the rivers flooded, they brought fertile soil, allowing crops to flourish. But when they raged, they destroyed everything in their path: homes, livestock, lives. It was a constant battle against nature itself. And in that struggle, humans learned something extraordinary: how to control the uncontrollable. The earliest settlers began digging canals, constructing irrigation systems, and mapping the flow of the rivers. They learned to harness the floods rather than fear them. In doing so, they unlocked the secret to abundance, surplus. And with surplus came trade, organization, and hierarchy. Villages turned into towns. Towns evolved into cities. And from those cities rose something the world had never seen before: structured civilization. Among these early cities, one stood above the rest: Uruk, the shining jewel of Sumer. Towering walls, massive temples, and markets that bustled with life. Uruk wasn't just a city, it was an idea. It represented humanity's newfound ability to shape the world rather than be shaped by it. Some historians even believe Uruk was the world's first true city, home to over 50,000 people, a staggering number for its time. But survival alone doesn't explain the rise of such brilliance. Something else was happening here, something revolutionary. The Sumerians, as these people came to be known, weren't content with living day to day. They wanted permanence. They wanted memory. And from that desire, they created the most powerful invention in human history: writing. On small clay tablets, they began carving wedge-shaped marks, cuneiform. What started as simple tallies of goods and grains soon evolved into symbols representing ideas, emotions, and even stories. For the first time, human thought could outlive the thinker. Knowledge was no longer confined to memory. It could be stored, shared, and passed through generations. Writing became the bridge between man and eternity. Yet even as they wrote about trade and crops, something deeper began to take shape: myths. The Sumerians told stories of gods and heroes, of floods and creation, of beings who descended from the heavens to teach mankind the ways of civilization. They called them the Anunnaki, those who came from the sky. In their myths, these celestial beings shaped humans from clay and breathed life into them. Were these just stories to explain the unexplainable? Or could they be distant echoes of a forgotten truth, memories of something far older, something lost to time? Archaeologists still puzzle over the precision and scale of Sumerian achievements. Their temples, called ziggurats, were massive, multi-tiered structures rising toward the heavens. Each was aligned with astonishing accuracy to celestial patterns: the movements of the stars, the path of the sun, the timing of the solstice. How did a people living over 5 millennia ago understand astronomy with such precision? Could their knowledge have come from the gods they so fervently worshipped, or perhaps from something they observed in the skies themselves? Beyond religion and architecture, the Sumerians also laid the foundation for nearly every aspect of modern society. They developed laws, mathematics, and governance. They organized trade routes, minted currencies, and established property rights. They even created schools to train scribes, the intellectual elite of their time. Every stroke on clay, every brick in a ziggurat, was a testament to their mastery over chaos. And yet, their progress came with a price. As cities grew, so did competition. Neighboring city-states like Lagash, Kish, and Ur fought for dominance. The very rivers that had given them life became battlegrounds for control. The quest for power, an instinct as old as humanity, began to take root. Kings emerged, armies formed, and the Sumerians became the first to wage organized warfare. The dawn of civilization was also the dawn of conflict. Still, even in war, they left their mark. The earliest recorded battle strategies, siege tactics, and military formations can be traced back to these very lands. The Sumerians documented victories, treaties, and laws, most famously the Code of Yornemu, a precursor to Hammurabi's later code. Justice, crime, and punishment, all concepts that began here in the cradle of civilization. And amid all this, they never stopped watching the heavens. Their priests, part astronomers, part mathematicians, tracked the stars, predicting eclipses and charting planets. They divided the circle into 360 degrees and time into 60 minutes, a system we still use today. Their obsession with the cosmos wasn't just religious, it was scientific. But the deeper they looked into the stars, the more their myths began to blur with mysteries. Every artifact, every inscription found in the ruins of Sumer whispers the same truth, that these people believed they were guided by powers beyond this earth. Whether divine inspiration or something else entirely, their creations were not accidents of time. They were deliberate, purposeful, and astonishingly advanced. As the sun sets over the ruins of ancient Ur, the cracked clay tablets glint faintly in the fading light, silent witnesses to humanity's first great awakening. The story of Sumer isn't just about what they built, it's about what they became. The first dreamers of civilization, the first architects of destiny, and perhaps the first to remember something the rest of us have long forgotten. In the heart of Mesopotamia, humanity learned what it meant to be human, and in doing so, we may have unlocked a secret far older than civilization itself. Every great civilization begins with a story, and in Mesopotamia, that story was written in the heavens. To the people of Sumer, Babylon, and Akkad, the world wasn't merely physical, it was divine, alive, and governed by unseen forces. Every river, storm, and star held meaning. The gods weren't distant, they were ever present, walking among mortals, shaping destinies, and demanding loyalty through rituals carved into the rhythm of daily life. But behind the poetry of their myths lies a deeper mystery. Who, or what, were these gods really? The Sumerians believed that their god descended from the sky in the earliest days, long before kings or cities existed. They called them the Anunnaki, those who came from above. These beings, they claimed, taught mankind agriculture, architecture, and the sciences of the stars. They ruled for generations, bestowing wisdom and law, until something changed. The ancient tablets speak of rebellion, of floods, and of the god retreating to the heavens once more, leaving humanity to fend for itself. To modern historians, these tales might sound like metaphors for natural events, floods, droughts, or political upheavals. But to those who lived then, they were memories passed down through millennia, etched in cuneiform. And what's most unsettling is how specific some of these accounts are. Ancient texts describe flying chariots of fire, glowing beings clad in metal, and sky boats that thundered as they rose. Could it be coincidence that similar imagery appears in the myths of Egypt, India, and even the Americas, civilizations separated by oceans and centuries? The Mesopotamians' fascination with the heavens wasn't born from fantasy. It was science. From the rooftops of ziggurats, priests studied the stars with an accuracy that still astonishes modern astronomers. They tracked Venus's 584-day cycle. They recorded the movements of Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars. They divided the sky into constellations and marked solstices with mathematical precision. All this 5,000 years ago, without telescopes, without modern tools, with only the naked eye and an insatiable curiosity. The stars, they believed, were not random. They were the language of the gods, messages written across the sky. The priest astronomers, known as Chaldeans, learned to read these messages, predicting eclipses, floods, and even political change based on celestial patterns. Their work became the foundation for what we now call astronomy, mathematics, and astrology. The zodiac, the 12 signs, the concept of 360 degrees in a circle, all were born here, beneath the Mesopotamian night sky. But the deeper their knowledge grew, the more divine their rulers became. Kings were not just men. They were intermediaries between heaven and earth. To rule was not merely to govern. It was to be chosen. From Gilgamesh of Uruk to Sargon of Akkad, each ruler claimed divine right, tracing lineage to the gods themselves. Take Gilgamesh, for instance, part man, part god. His story, inscribed on clay tablets nearly 4,000 years old, is the oldest epic known to humanity. In it, he searches immortality after witnessing the death of his friend Enkidu. His journey leads him to Utnapishtim, a man who survived a great flood sent by the gods, a story strikingly similar to the biblical tale of Noah. Coincidence or connection? The parallels are too many to ignore. The flood myth, the creation of man from clay, the serpent of temptation, all appear first in Mesopotamian tablets, centuries before the Old Testament was written. It suggests something profound, that the roots of the world's oldest religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, may lie buried in the myths of Sumer. And yet, despite their divine devotion, the Mesopotamians were pragmatic. Their temples were not just places of worship. They were centers of knowledge, housing archives, astronomers, and scholars. The ziggurats, colossal step temples that rose above their cities, symbolized mountains reaching toward the gods. But they were also observatories, perfectly aligned with celestial patterns. The most famous, the Etemenanki of Babylon, was said to reach the heavens itself. Some believe this structure inspired the biblical Tower of Babel, humanity's attempt to bridge heaven and earth. But perhaps what makes Mesopotamia so haunting is a question of how much they truly understood. How did a civilization that emerged from mud huts so quickly achieve architectural, mathematical, and astronomical precision? Were they the beneficiaries of a lost knowledge, remnants of an even older, forgotten civilization? Or were their gods the ones who gave them that knowledge in the first place? The ancient texts speak cryptically of a time before kingship descended from the heavens. They list rulers who reigned for thousands of years, impossibly long lifespans. Then, suddenly, a great flood resets everything. Afterward, human kings rule for ordinary lifetimes. Was this symbolic storytelling, or an echo of something more? A shift from divine rule to mortal? From gods to men? These riddles have fueled theories for decades, some academic, others speculative. Erich von Däniken, Zacharias Sitchin, and many others have proposed that the Anunnaki were extraterrestrial visitors who influenced early humanity. While mainstream archaeology dismisses such claims as pseudoscience, the allure of the idea endures, because the Sumerians themselves believed it. They didn't imagine gods living in clouds. They described them in tangible, technological terms: ships, gates, and shining fire. Whether divine, alien, or symbolic, one truth remains. The Mesopotamians are the first to look beyond themselves and see meaning in the stars. They sought answers not just in the earth beneath them, but in the vast expanse above. And in doing so, they became the architects of human curiosity, the first dreamers of the cosmos. Yet for all their wisdom, their gods were fickle. The same heavens that guided them also destroyed them, with droughts, floods, and wars. Kings who claimed divine favor fell to dust. Empires that worshipped the stars eventually vanished beneath the sands. Perhaps their greatest realization wasn't about God or power, but something far simpler, that every civilization, no matter how divine it believes itself to be, is bound by the same stars it worships. As the night deepens over ancient Babylon, the constellations that once guided priests and kings still glow, unchanged, eternal. The same stars that watched over Sumer watch over us now. And maybe, just maybe, they still carry the same silent messages, waiting for us to understand them once again. As the golden age of Sumer dawned, it seemed as though humanity had finally conquered the chaos of the natural world. Their cities glistened in the sun, their temples rose to the heavens, and their knowledge stretched from the earth to the stars. But history has a cruel rhythm. Every rise is followed by a fall. And for the first civilization, that fall was as mysterious as its rise. By 2000 BCE, the mighty cities of Sumer, Uruk, Lagash, and Eridu began to fade into ruin. The same rivers that had birthed civilization now betrayed it. Over centuries, relentless irrigation drew salt from the soil, poisoning the very fields that had once sustained empires. Crops withered, livestock perished, and famine spread like a shadow. The cradle of civilization was suffocating in its own brilliance. Yet environmental collapse was only the beginning. As the Sumerians weakened, new powers emerged from the north and west. The Akkadians, led by a man whose legend would echo through millennia, Sargon the Great. Rising from humble origins, Sargon conquered the city-states one by one, forging the world's first empire. He united Sumer and Akkad, creating a superpower that stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. Under Sargon and his successors, Mesopotamia entered a new age of kingship, ambition, and blood. The old gods of Sumer were merged with those of Akkad, and the stories of the Anunnaki were rewritten, their divine order now serving the ambitions of mortal kings. Temples became fortresses of both faith and power. The scribes, once historians and priests, became propagandists of empire, recording the victories of rulers chosen by the gods themselves. But empires built on conquest rarely last. After Sargon's death, the Akkadian Empire fell into chaos, crushed by invasions, famine, and rebellion. The great cities that had once hummed with life became ghost towns. From the ashes, new civilizations rose, the Babylonians and the Assyrians, inheritors of the Sumerian legacy. They rebuilt what was lost, but they also added something new, ambition without restraint. The city of Babylon soon became the crown jewel of the ancient world. Under the rule of Hammurabi, it transformed into a center of law, science, and architecture. Hammurabi's code, carved into black basalt, became the first written system of justice. An eye for an eye, it declared, not as vengeance, but as order. It was a reflection of the Sumerian belief that the universe was governed by balance, the idea that every action demanded an equal reaction. But even as Babylon thrived, the ghosts of Sumer whispered from the past. The gods were the same, their names altered but their stories unchanged. In the temples of Marduk, echoes of Enlil and Enki could still be heard. In the myths of Ishtar, the traces of Inanna lingered, the goddess of love and war, forever torn between creation and destruction. It was as though civilization itself had inherited not just the wisdom of the Sumerians, but their destiny, the cycle of rise and ruin. As the centuries passed, another shadow crept across Mesopotamia, the Assyrians. Masters of war, they built an empire of iron and blood. Their kings, Ashurbanipal, Tiglath-Pileser, Sennacherib, ruled through fear and divine authority. They claimed to be chosen by the gods, and their brutality was legendary. But even in their cruelty, they carried the flame of Sumer's brilliance. In the great library of Nineveh, Ashurbanipal preserved thousands of clay tablets, including the Epic of Gilgamesh and ancient hymns from Sumerian temples. Through them, the voice of the world's first civilization would never truly die. And yet, despite all the glory and terror, a question lingered. What truly ended the first civilization? Was it war, famine, or something deeper, something cosmic? The Sumerian tablets tell the great flood that once swept across the land, wiping out cities and kingdoms. Archaeological evidence shows layers of silt, traces of massive flooding around 2900 BCE. Could this disaster have erased a generation, forcing survivors to rebuild from scratch? Or could it be that these stories of divine wrath were echoes of something greater, a celestial event, perhaps, that scarred both the land and the human psyche? The stories of the gods grew quieter with time, their temples buried beneath the sands. But their influence endured. When the Greeks looked to the heavens, when the Hebrews wrote their scriptures, when the Persians dreamed of empires, they were all walking in the footsteps of Mesopotamia. Even the concept of heaven and hell, of divine judgment and cosmic order, can be traced back to the Sumerian underworld, a realm where souls awaited judgment from the gods. Modern archaeologists who walk among the ruins of Ur or Eridu often speak of an eerie silence, a feeling that the stones themselves remember. Each brick seems to whisper of forgotten kings, vanished gods, and the first spark of human ambition. The cuneiform tablets they unearth are not just relics, they are voices, fragments of a world that once believed it could touch eternity. And perhaps, in a way, it did, because long after their temples crumbled, the ideas of the Sumerians endured. Writing, law, astronomy, architecture, these weren't just inventions, they were legacies. Every word written today, every law passed, every map drawn, owes a debt to the first people who decided to leave a mark upon the world. But maybe their greatest legacy is a warning. For the Sumerians, knowledge was power, but it was also peril. The more they tamed nature, the more they upset its balance. In their quest for mastery, they invited destruction. And perhaps that cycle has never truly ended. Each age of progress carries the same seeds of downfall. As the sun sets over the ruins of Uruk, the desert winds sweep across broken stones that once formed the world's first city walls. Beneath those sands lie not just the remains of a civilization, but the memory of who we once were, the first dreamers, the first builders, the first to rise, and the first to fall. Their cities may be gone, but their echoes still resonate in every story, every star chart, every written word. Civilization began here, and perhaps in ways we still don't understand. It never truly left. In the dust of Mesopotamia lie the fingerprints of gods and the blueprint of our own destiny. But if this was the first civilization, the question remains, who taught them how to build it?